name is Emilia Pisarsky, and I was born in Ukraine, Zbaraj, in 1926. My mom and I came to Canada in 1938, just before the war, in September. We were very, very lucky because the war broke out in 1939 in June. We came almost the last ship that left Poland. He was a farmer, and he came just like everybody else for a better life and for freedom, because under the Polish system at the time, they were persecuted. He was in the Polish army for a while, just like everybody else. But then after, when there was amnesty, he had to report to the authorities almost every 2 weeks. And this got to be a little bit hard for him to live that way, and he decided, like many other young men, immigrated to Canada. Mm-hmm. And they were permitted to go without any question. I think they wanted really to let as many young people leave as possible, because there was an underground movement. Mm-hmm. So they were not in any way stopped or anything. So that was one reason. For her to stay longer was mainly she didn't want to leave whatever they had behind. My mother had a ulinia, which was rubele ulis, smaku is konoplju. And this was not a all year round occupation, but it was seasonal. Mm-hmm. And she did very well. She liked that part of being independent, and she worked with her brother. But she was not too many people had newspaper or radios that they could hear what's going on in the world, and only until my father wrote letters that there's a war and he'd like her to come. Mm-hmm. And that's when things started to happen. You know, she decided that maybe she should come and to bring me to Canada to meet my father. I was only maybe a year old. Oh, wow. So, and I never knew my father. I got to know him when I met him here in Canada. I left, I was 10 years old. I was very happy because I was going to see my father. Oh. Everybody had a father, and I only had a picture of my father. So, and I was wondering what it would be like to live with my father and my mother together. It was, hospodarka had to be dismantled. Right. Whatever. My mother had to sell the cow, and somebody came to buy the chickens, and I had to give up my dog, Picus.
Oh, okay.
And I had to give him up.
Right.
And of course, I was wondering how would we get to Canada? Mm-hmm. I had no idea that we'd be on a boat.
Right.
And what kind of a boat
right.
it would be. And so it was quite an experience, because we had to go through some medical exams in Ternopil. Mm-hmm. It was the biggest city close to where we lived. Mm-hmm. And then another examination in Warsaw, like sort of a holding place where they examined everybody, asked questions, and they had to be in perfect health to come to Canada. Right. It's quite different now.
Yes.
And then we left from Gdynia, which is a port on the Baltic Sea. And then there was quite a commotion. A lot of people were boarding, and that was something it was amazing to see all these people getting on the boat. And Poland at that time had 2 passenger ships. One was Batory and one was Pilsudski. So when we were coming to Canada on a Pilsudski, Batory was going back. So we'd wave to each other. And we were on a ship for 10 days. And now when I recall, I don't think I ever want to go on a boat cruise. Because I've been on one, and I've seen how some people behaved. Well, they were sick. Yes. A lot of them were sick. My mother was sick. I wasn't. Right. And that was quite a thing. And we arrived in Halifax. And again, we were stopped there. Everybody had to go through some more examination and papers and all that. We were met there by Red Cross. And that was a wonderful experience, because all the children were given milk. They were there with milk and with no cookies. There was white bread with jam. So I thought that was pretty good. We're going to have white bread. At one time, now we think bread is not so good.
Then when it's white, yes, it's true.
We're eating brown bread or black bread.
Right.
We grew up on that. Yeah, my mother had a friend who was coming to Canada at the same time. Their name was Lahoda, family of Lahoda, and another family, Litvin.
Oh yes.
Litvin. These people also arrived in Montreal, and they were with children, mainly mothers with children, because the fathers were here.
Right.
And I did keep up a friendship with Lahoda, my friend Stefania Lahoda. She has since passed away. Yeah. Of course, to go to school in Ukraine, you couldn't say it was Ukraine, it was Poland at the time. I attended Polish classes, and only in grade 3 they were starting to teach Ukrainian alphabet, Ukrainian.
Right.
And that's when I picked up a little bit of Ukrainian. But the rest of my Ukrainian I learned in Canada. I learned to read Polish a little bit. I do speak a bit Polish. And Ukrainian, my father always had a newspaper, Nowy Szlach. And I used to read a little bit, but my father pretended that he couldn't read, and he'd say to me, "You read it for me. Czytaj mені gazetu." And I got into it like that, and I improved. Yeah, oh yeah. He even bought paid for the passage.
Right.
Paid for the passage here, and then my mother, whatever she had, any possessions over there, she sold it, and mainly left it for her brother, because her brother took over. There was a harvest that we had some zboża, grain, and that was left behind because he suggested that to sell it later on at a higher price than early in the season like that. And so my mother left it to him. The only thing I know that we sold the chickens, and somebody came to take the cow. That was not really the last one. The last one came in the spring. And that was, I think it was Batory, that was the last one that came, because Pilsudski brought us here, and then it went back, and then there's a Batory that came,
I see.
you know, another, yeah, that was, and I know that my aunt Schuber, she came on the last one. I think she even came something like in April or March.
Mm-hmm.
And then the war broke out in June. Yes, my mother was aware, but they never believed it.
Uh-huh.
They didn't believe because it's far away.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody had a newspaper that they could read or buy because it was expensive to buy a newspaper, or they didn't have radios. It's only if they had news from abroad, let's say from Canada or United States or Argentina, because at that time a lot of the young men left for Argentina and a lot left for United States.
Right.
I was curious, I was looking around for something good to eat.
Right.
And I did have an orange, and that was the first time I've ever had an orange. And it was wonderful, but I kept the skin
Yes.
to keep with me so that I can smell it.
I see.
And that was the biggest thing, yeah. Well, we survived.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, I don't think there was any first or second class that somebody ate better in the first class or second class. It was be all the same. I imagine ordinary, a lot of potatoes and maybe cheese and meat. I don't know, because of refrigeration it's hard to keep the meat.
Right.
So any other food I don't remember. The soup and bread.
Right.
With butter. There was butter on the table. But any other thing. Milk was not, I didn't see any milk.
Right.
My mother hardly ate. I mean, she had her own, a little provision that she had her own bread, and she brought some bacon, salted bacon, and she probably survived on that. And other people maybe had garlic with them,
Yes.
that they ate garlic. And I don't know if there was any liquor on board. I don't remember seeing anybody drinking.
Mm-hmm.
But and the voyage was 10 days. I think they must have taken us by bus.
Uh-huh.
By bus, because we came by train to Gdynia,
Right.
and after that, with our luggage, with our baggage, people had trunks and they had
Yes.
their comforters, their poduszki,
Right.
and periny, everything, you know, bundled up, and they were really coming here because they didn't know what to expect and what's waiting for them. She had a perina and she had two big poduszki from goose feathers.
Yes.
Or goose down and goose feathers, and yeah, she did prepare herself for to stay. I don't remember. I might have been too young. I remember when my grandfather came back after being in Canada for 20 years. He came here before the First World War. And he lived outside of Montreal in Longueuil now. And he was working when they were building Jacques-Cartier Bridge. They were, all these young men that came at the time, they were mixing cement by hand. And that part of the bridge on the other side of Longueuil, whenever I cross, I know that my grandfather worked here, and he probably worked hard for pennies an hour. Well, it was before First World War. And he
Canada.
stayed for 20 years because he came in 1933, I
Okay.
remember.
All right.
Because on the monument it says that he died in 1936, and we were still in the old country.
Right.
And I know I attended the funeral. I was at the funeral. I
Right.
remember the funeral.
Okay.
So he was here. He didn't go back because there was a war on.
Right. Yes.
And not that he earned a lot of money. It was mainly to survive,
Right.
just like everybody else. The first immigrants that came had a very hard time. Very hard time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a big city. Montreal is a big city, industrial city,
Mm-hmm.
and there were jobs here. And so he stayed here. They took any jobs that was available. A lot of them were just ordinary laborers, and he was a carpenter. He did some carpentry work, and that was seasonal too.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we came in 1938, my mother, not long afterwards, got a job with a paper factory,
Uh-huh.
recycling paper, because during, even they did it better then than they do now. Now it goes and ends up in big landfills, or they
Mhm,
burn it, or whatever they do with it. But at that time it was, they recycled papers. Oh, we lived in the Frontenac district, near Iberville. That's near the church, where St. Michael's Church. That was nice. We didn't have a bathtub, but we had running water, and we had electricity. So this was a big plus. It was a triplex. It was a triplex on Florian Street, and I think I remember the number even. 2231 or something like
My
that
goodness.
on Florian Street, and we lived there. And for first year we lived there, and then there was an apartment available across the street
Mhm.
that had a bathtub, so we moved there.
Aha.
So it was interesting. It was a triplex, and we had a bedroom, three rooms, kitchen, a bedroom, and a living room. And I slept in the living room. Yeah, and my parents had a bedroom, and we had a kitchen. But we didn't have an electric stove. We had a wooden
Oh,
stove,
yes.
and we had a gas unit on the
Yes.
side, for quick cooking.
Uh-huh.
But to heat the house, we used to burn coal and wood. Yeah. And we've come a long way.
Yes, certainly.
We have electric heating now.
Yeah,
And we've
absolutely.
turned the knob, and it's instant heat. I have kilim, a kilim. I keep it downstairs. I have that. And I've had something that was made out of konopli,
Oh,
pradivo. They used to harvest the
Right.
stems,
Right.
and they made hemp from that. And there was some people, they had that kujili when they
Yes.
prale, and they made threads, and from that they made
Wove.
yeah,
Yes.
coverings for, and we had a nice big piece of that, but I gave it away because one lady was looking for something from hemp, so I gave it to her because she's into all kinds of materials. She did bring some cutlery, and some few knives and forks, I remember, and spoons, and she did bring that. And anything else I don't remember. It's just mainly bedding, you know, and her clothes, because you couldn't bring a lot. She had the perina and the two podushki, and we didn't have a kufr like some people had a kufr.
Yes.
We didn't. It was just like a bundle, and that was just about it. Yeah, it was tied together in many ways, and wrapped up in that hemp material. Bulutak. It was a width of about maybe 30 inches, a strip like that, 2 strips, and it was sewn together, and everything was packed inside.
Oh, wow.
And that was very strong. You know, it maybe it got dirty and everything, but it was very strong. It protected everything that was inside, and we've had that for a long time.
Wow.
My mother would wash it and put it on when it was sunny to bleach.
Bleach it, yes.
Bleach that a little bit. No, she did not.
She purchased it then.
Somebody else that was. She probably gave them the material for that, you know,
right.
from Konopli.
Right.
But that was a very useful thing that people planted Konopli. It was not only for the seeds and the oil that you get from it, which was wonderful.
Right.
And but the stems that you use that as to start your fire.
Right.
And then the hairs, that
you grew, yes.
That was there. Well, you saved it, you know,
right.
and all this, you saved that. And there were some people that would be making it into threads.
Yes.
But the stems, people utilized everything from that. You know, it was a good product. Everybody grew that.
Right.
No. Because we arrived in September and I only went to school after Christmas. And I attended Protestant school. I went to Protestant school, Sarah Maxwell, in Montreal, where everybody else went to school there. It was nice. It was good. Before to learn English, it wasn't very hard for me because I knew the alphabet in Polish. And for the couple of months that I was here, before starting school, I picked up a little bit of English. So I understood. When I went to school, I understood already. And then you pick it up quite fast, quick. Yes.
There were a lot of Ukrainian Poles there.
Yeah. Well, my friend at Lahoda, she was there, and another Mary Bilovos, and her name was Jessie Kozak, and Biloniska, and Yakovich, Jenny Yakovich. Yeah, Jenny. And Biloniska, you know her, Stephanie. Yeah, she was in my class, yeah. And Father Schuster used to make a trip to our school. I don't know if it's once a month or once in 2 months to talk to the Ukrainians that were in school, to give us religious teaching, you know. So that was nice. Yeah, the Ukrainian church on Iberville really didn't start on Iberville. It started down at Old Montreal, where there's a Ukrainian church, Świętego Ducha. There is a Ukrainian Catholic church there. It started there, and they had a Towarzystwo Proświta there. But as more immigrants arrived, they were moving away from the old city of Montreal. They're moving up north, more like towards Frontenac area. That wasn't really up north, but it was further away. And there were more and more people living there, and they started a church there. And the church now, was it a year ago, 2 years ago, they celebrated 100 years anniversary. So that church was there before St. Sophie's.
Right.
Yeah. And but the way the church is now, it's only a basement, because they had very elaborate plans to build it up. And but during Depression time, people had no money, there were no donations, so they stopped. They just put the roof on, and that's the way it is up to now. But it's wonderful to go there, because you don't have any steps to climb. So the older people love to go there because it's off the sidewalk and into the church.
Right.
But it is a beautiful church inside. It's like in an oval.
Right.
An oval. Father Kutashno, he's at the Pokrova. He's
Okay,
on
so
Rose.
there were 3 churches there.
Well, that one started a while back.
Yes. Okay.
But the one, the Catholic Church on Iberville started a long time ago.
Okay.
100 years ago.
Okay.
It was 10 years before Sophia. None. There was no school. There was one school, and we all went. It was a Polish school.
Okay.
We all had to go to a Polish school. They were, but I didn't attend because I spoke Ukrainian and I read.
Right.
And then I picked up the writing on my own, because lately I've been writing letters to relatives in Ukraine and correspond. And you get to improve.
Right.
The more you write and read, it comes easy. Well, beautiful, not like they were here.
Yes.
I remember the pampushki that
Right.
my grandmother used to make
In the
for
old country.
Shetevechet, in
Yes.
Ukraine. And we used that oil from the seeds, you know.
Right, from lamb.
From land,
Yes.
from konopli,
Konopli, yes.
mainly from konopli.
Yes.
Because when you'd walk along the street, and it's people preparing for Shetevechet, you can smell pampushki almost from every home.
Right.
Because they're frying, and you can smell it. And it would be, as they turned the pampushki over to fry on the other side,
Right.
it left a little green rim all
Right.
around, because the oil was thin.
Yes.
It looks greener.
Yes.
And it was nice. It was beautiful. It was nice. And I enjoyed eating them, yeah. No. My mother would bake them rather than fry them.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
She was into bread. No, not really. Scary stories.
Okay.
Yeah. Тримайся вдома, ніде не йде, бо тебе може циган вкрасти.
Yes.
Бо цигани ходять. Не йди далеко, будь коло хати. Well, at Christmas time,
Right.
колядували. That's
Right.
about it, the only one. Yeah, but I'm not much for singing, because I cannot hold a tune. You know, I don't have the ear for music. Well, thank you. That's about. I hope it keeps up. You never know, because here today and tomorrow is another day, but it's all in God's hands. Well, I could, but I'll start crying, because I still have this longing for my home. You miss your own, you miss the place where you were born.
Right.
You get so attached. I don't know how other people feel, but to me it's very precious.
Right.
And I've been to Ukraine 4 or 5 times. And not that anything changed, because in Sparosh where we lived, the name of that street was Doha Vulica, Doha.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, under the Soviet rule, it was called Karla Marksa, but now it's back to Doha
Doha
Vulica.
Vulica.
Well,
Long
nothing's
street.
changed on that street. There's still potholes and mud after a rain, and no improvement on the road. And a lot of people, I don't know how they survive. They just, some people have cars, because you don't see many horse and buggies now. And I don't know how they travel and how their cars could hold up, and but they do. But that's some of the streets in Sparosh are paved, but this is a very famous long street. Now the name tells you Doha Vulica. You think they'd repair it?
Yeah.
Nema. My father, before he left for Canada, he built a home with my mother. I to було з глини. І вони робили такі халамуці, and they put straw. They brought in, there's a certain part of where we lived that they would bring this earth, clay sort of,
Right.
and they would mix it with water, and they'd put straw
Right.
and that, and they'd make these
Bricks.
like
Yes.
that, and they would build a home from that. And that's how our house was built. I know there was an open area called Shine, and then on one side it was like the big room, living room, and on the other side was the kitchen, big kitchen, and then there was a bedroom, 1 bedroom, and 2 bedroom. It was just like a big screwdriver.
Okay.
It was a press made,
Right.
and then with a opening in the.
So she ground.
And then well, at first they had to heat the ground up seeds.
Okay.
Bring it so that it be warm, so that they can extract the oil.
Okay.
And then they would pack them into a container, but lined with felt.
Oh yes.
And then they would close it. So then when this presses it, because there are 2 men, one person goes this way and another one around, they turn it like that.
Okay.
And then this would press the oil, and it filters it through the felt. And then there was an opening there that it would catch the oil there.
I see.
So it's a very antiquated way of doing it, but it worked. It was a separate building.
Okay.
Yeah, his father had a separate building,
Okay.
and it's only for that. And then they had a big open area like a stove with a
Right.
big, you might say, frying pan.
Right.
And they would and then there was a mill to grind up
Right.
the seeds, and they would put it in there, and of course you have to have some fire, something
Right.
to heat it up.
Right.
And my mother would know that she would test it to see how
Warm.
it is and how wet it is. And then they would just scoop all of that into that round container lined with felt and close it up, and then they would press. It's like a press. No, I used to come from school and to meet my mother.
Right.
And the remnant of what was left. They called it makuch.
Yes.
And I used to like the one that was from poppy seeds.
Oh, yes.
So I used to say to my mother, save me the one from poppy
Poppy
seeds.
seed.
So when I'm vanilla shale a little bit, so I used to munch on that. But the rest, some people would come with their seeds, they only want the seeds and they leave the makuch behind.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of paying for both, they would leave the makuch behind, what was left, and then if there was enough, there was a place where a man was keeping pigs.
Oh,
and
yes.
yeah, when they tomochele would ye,
Right.
and they would mix that with the potatoes and they would feed the pigs. No, and my mother used to keep some for herself, taksamo, mochele with warm water, it
Right.
would fall apart, and then if they boil potatoes or parboil potatoes to feed the pig,
Right.
and they would mix it, and that was quite nourishing for
wow.
for the animals. Yeah, it was
Interesting.
good. I mean, nothing was wasted,
Right.
and the oil, especially the oil, was good for eating,
Right.
for flavoring your food, and for animals.
Very good.
If a cow was sick, bloated or something, they didn't know what to do. They'd pour the oil, let the animal drink it.
Right.
And I know that a neighbor would come, and if my mother's cow would be on its side and suffering with gas pains,
Yes. Yes.
I know that they would pour the oil, and after a while massage the stomach and
Right.
and cover it, and then she would
Pass wind.
pass
Yes.
pass the
Yeah.
the gas, and a miracle. Then she'd be up on her feet.
Wow. Wow.
So they didn't have veterinarians, but people that knew
What
how
to
to
do.
take care of
Okay.
their animals. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a lot we take for granted.
Yes.
I don't overheat my house,
Right.
and I don't throw away remnants of bread
Right.
because I know I didn't have any. There were times we didn't have any. So all these things come back.
Right.
I don't like to see people waste stuff.
Right.
It's not to be wasted.
Right.
Everything's good. We're very fortunate here, very fortunate. But there's no place like home.
Yes, that I understand.
There's no place like home.